This is mainly for people who were not able to come on Tuesday night to see exactly what we're doing in our groups when we are revising and editing. The collaborating part, of course, is exchanging papers with everyone in your group. So let's say you have 5 people, then all 5 people have to have their papers in order for this to work. So you will read for other people's, and they will read for other people's. So in the end, you will have your copy, your original, then you will have 4 different copies by 4 different people. Now, the reason you want to do that is because, as you will see when I show you how you can make comments and all of that on the paper, you can't have 4 people making comments on a paper. It would be impossible to read. It would be a disaster. So let me just say, when you're done, if you have 5 people in your group, then you will walk away with your copy and you'll have 4 other copies, and each one of those students will make comments on your paper. Then what you need to do is take them, and if they're all saying the same thing or 2 of them are saying the same thing, you really need to go back and look over what you said and see if maybe they had some better suggestions. If all 4 of them are coming up with different things, well, that's up to you. All right. That way they don't see what other people are writing. They're just reading yours and giving their opinion on your work. And you'll do that also with 4 papers. Plan, execute, which means you're going to cut, you're going to add, and you're going to reorder. Now, this is, and you'll do some more of this later, but right now, number one, if you have any sentences that are redundant, in other words, if they repeat themselves, cut it, delete it. Okay? Number two, what if you left some relevant information out or important information out that could more clearly articulate your point? Well, then you may need to add some in there. And you might be reading somebody's paper and say, that's a good point. Can you tell me a little bit more about it so it's clearer to me? Number three, you might have to rearrange your information that's out of order. You may have some great ideas, some great evidence, but they're not really in proper order. And I find that sometimes I do that very same thing and I have to go back and rearrange what I said. An example would be, in some cases, the evidence should come before the reasoning instead of the reasoning first. So that's why I'm very liquid on my CER. It could be CRE, it could be CERRE, it could be CERRR. It's just however it logically works to clearly articulate and strengthen your argument. All right, that's plan and execute, cut, add, and reorder. Also, part of planning and executing is editing and proofreading. Now, these are actually, editing is different from revising, and we'll talk about that. Editing is this: does everything in each paragraph focus on just one point and one point only? So if you're saying that JonBenét's parents killed her, and one of the things that makes you think that is their suspicious behavior, well, you don't want to bring the pineapple in, okay? And you don't want to bring other things in other than how they were acting once her disappearance was reported and once her body was found. That's what you need to focus on, just that point. And in fact, you might narrow it down and just talk about once or before the body was found. I think it was very suspicious that they weren't in the same room together. Whatever, but stay just on one of the points. You can talk about the pineapples in another one. Then, where is the most important information in each of your paragraphs? Is it at the beginning? Is it in the middle? Or is it at the end? And does each paragraph have at least one, and at least one quotation sandwich, which is the lead in that introduces who said it, who the expert was, and leads into the quote. And then after the quote, you have to explain how it is important in the paragraph and how it strengthens your argument. Does each paragraph flow smoothly from one paragraph to the next using transitions? We'll work on that a little bit more. It's really not hard to do, but what you're doing in the topic sentences, you're mentioning the main point before it, and then you're launching into the second main point. We can, that's relatively easy, but it actually is something that's very important, or your paper is disjointed and you get people bored reading your paper. It's not smooth, it's not easy to read, and they get irritated. So you got to make it as smooth as possible. Editing the sentences. Does each sentence have a subject and a verb or a predicate? The verb is just, I mean, you could just say she went, or you could say, well, I wouldn't put a 2-word sentence in there, but you could say she went to the basement after 2 hours. Now that's got a predicate. Does each sentence begin with a capital letter and end with a period? Let me also interject something here. I notice some of you, when you write an email to me, that you use a lowercase I when you're using I as a personal pronoun. Come on, guys, you're in college. And you might talk like that. In fact, sometimes I might not capitalize things if I'm texting somebody who knows me very well. But when you're addressing someone formally, like a college professor, like a teacher, I don't know, maybe even your parents, but people like that, your boss, you need to use proper formal grammar. So you need to begin with a capital letter and end with a period. You also need to have not only that, well, we'll go into that later here in just a second. All of your proper pronouns, proper nouns need to be capitalized, such as your name, where you live, Dallas, Texas, maybe the name of your apartment complex, Brighton Arms, or something like that. All right, so please be very, very careful and make sure that you capitalize proper nouns, first letter of each sentence, and you put a period at the end of all of your sentences for this paper. Do you have a variety of sentences, or do they all begin with a subject? Try combining sentences and beginning with introductory phrases. There are 2 or 3 people in my classes who already have mastered complex sentences that start with an introductory phrase, and then it could launch into in the same sentence, a compound sentence, and they're artful at that. And I would love to know who their English teachers were, because somebody taught them well. Instead of starting everything with the girl said or she said, don't start it with the subject. Have an introductory phrase. In other words, take the end of the sentence and put it at the beginning. She laughed when she came home. Well, why don't you flip that and say, when she came home, comma, she laughed. So have a variety of sentences. I've often said that essays have a rhythm to them, just like a song, and they're melodic. If you have written it well, it almost has a beat to it. And that's by having different, you can have short sentences, long sentences, medium sentences, simple sentences, complex sentences, compound sentences, but by no means have all complex sentences or all compound sentences or all simple sentences. Go back and make a conscious effort of getting a rhythm going to your paper. Make sure all of your sentences are parallel. It's usually better to write in past tense. If you want to write in present tense, you're still going to have to go back and make sure that all of your verbs are, if they're past tense, they're all past tense. If there is present tense, then you got to keep everything present tense. So just watch your tenses. For example, now this is a parallel one. For example, the bunny is hopping, stopping, and running. Notice all verbs end with an ing. It's not the bunny hopped, stopping, and running. No, they all have to have an ing. Those are all verbs. Is the helping verb. Does any sentence begin with there or it? Take it out. There's another, every class says, okay, I challenge you, Miss Holland. It says there is such and such. I want you to rewrite that sentence. I take the challenge gladly, and I would be happy for you to challenge me, and I will show you. There is, or it is just superfluous. It is just not necessary, just added words. Okay, then in your editing and proofreading, you're going to edit your language. So what is the tone of your essay? Again, some of y'all are very informal and you don't capitalize words that should be capitalized. You say gonna, or instead of going to. You say all of these different things that are very informal, but this is a college class. Tone needs to be professional. Just remember that, professional. Do you need to replace verbs like do or be with more specific verbs? So for example, Sarah was going to do a project for school safety, or would it be better to say Sarah was going to create? Create is a much more vivid verb than do, a project for school safety. Are pronouns and antecedents clear and correct? Everyone placed their work on the teacher's desk. That is wrong because it is a little bit misleading, but if it has one or body, then that means it's one. So it would be everyone placed his or her work on the teacher's desk. Now, for the longest time, we always reverted when it was singular. This is the pronoun and the antecedent is everyone. We would revert to his because in most languages you do that. Well, then the women's rights movements came along and they said, well, that's not fair because we're not men. So let's say his or her. Well, I've noticed that some people will just say her, or the people will say his. So you could choose. If you're a her, you can say her. If you're a his, you can say his. If this is singular. Correct words that sound the same, homonyms, homophones, are spelled differently. There, and there. It's, here, here's, here, and then, well, that should have been an S, etc. And that's only a few of them. And spell check many times will not catch that. Also, get rid of cliches like don't judge a book by its cover, or every dark cloud has a silver lining, or happily ever after. Sorry about that. I need to take that out. Use your computer's spell check and grammar check, but they are not foolproof. Again, they are not foolproof. So if you get a low grade because you've got a lot of grammatical and sentence structure errors, then first of all, shame on y'all because y'all had other people look at this. So shame on all of y'all. But that's no excuse. It's a computer, okay, and it is programmed by people, but it's algorithms and the things like that that we don't account for, that it's just not that smart. I'll just put it that way. Remember when we were talking about fake news and real news and how nothing will ever replace the human when it comes to it. Computers are great, but you also need, there's a human check that you need to do. Okay, check to make make sure all four margins are set to 1 inch, and I've shown you how to do that on the video I gave y'all last week. Read each sentence, begin with the last sentence, and work up to check if anything should be changed. There's a professor here at Dallas College who I just thought this was so smart, because he would get his students to put their pointer fingers, they raise their pointer fingers on each hand, and they put one finger at the beginning of the sentence, one at the end, and just read that to see if it was a complete thought or not. And maybe that would help us if we would do that. He said it helped his students immensely. And so just wanted to tell you that. But to start at the end and work backward, now that's interesting. Now that's a challenge. This is something that people hate to do. Read your essay out loud to yourself and have someone read it out loud to you. How many times were you in a classroom when the teacher had everyone stand up and read his or her paper, and you would see a kid up there, there would be at least one, probably more than that, who is just tra-la-lying along. He's reading his paper, and all of a sudden he stops and starts squinting like, what? And he can't believe he's written some of the stuff he's written. It doesn't make sense. Well, that's not the time to figure that out. The time to figure that out is when you're proofreading. So you need to read it out loud. I know you don't like to do it, but I'm going to tell you that's the only way that I figure out when I do things wrong. And guess what? I have to do it more than once. Okay. So don't be in such a rush. You want to polish this up. So setting goals for revising. You'll sharpen your focus. Make sure you clearly stated your intent in your thesis statement. And a thesis statement would be John and Patsy Ramsey contributed to the death of their child, or they had something to do with the death of their child, however you want to say it. That's your thesis. But then you got to have 3 things to back that up. And remember, you have to have a counter argument. So, number 2, strengthen your argument. Make sure your key ideas are sufficient and clear. If you're talking about the pineapple bowl with the pineapple and the milk in it, make sure I focus on that bowl, the fingerprints, who was eating it, who supposedly wasn't eating it, but they found out later was eating it. There's so much about that pineapple. You could do a whole, the bowl and its contents. There you go. You got a whole paragraph there. Understandability. Make sure everything's understandable and flows smoothly and logically. And those of y'all who are proofreading other people, you're going to be the one who will really catch some of that because you're not familiar with what the other student has written. So if something's not smooth or logical, or you need more information, you got to let that person know. Your reader should have a very clear understanding of your argument and support your argument. Okay, now collaboration. Again, if you're not here and you're listening to this video, and you do need to be on a team. So you should. I've already got 8 people on a team. and they're the ones who showed up the last time. So if you didn't come last week and you want to be on a team, you need to tell me if you can before class tomorrow. But you also have to bring your paper. So this is the way I envision it, and I'm not going to be nitpicky on how y'all do it. I'm just going to tell you what I want to have done. You may use the table outside of the classroom to do this if you want to. Of course, be polite and respectful. Don't talk over people. If working online, as a group, decide how to best share and exchange files. Label files carefully. Now, I have enabled y'all to collaborate online, and we may need to do some work on that. I'm going to test it with some of you guys, and I think that y'all could actually meet outside of class by just collaborating with each other online. But tomorrow and Thursday, I would prefer the face-to-face. You're going to have to make an agenda that fits into a specific time frame. You're going to have 3 people appointed. You're going to have a timekeeper. Now, on Tuesday night, if y'all get 10 or 15 minutes in your group, then hallelujah. And maybe you'll get more. But you're going to have somebody watch the time. If you're in the let me start with the 2 o'clock class. If you're in the 2 o'clock class, then around 3:15, you need to call time. And then y'all decide, they'll give you 5 minutes to talk about where you go next. Then if you're in my 3:30 class, the person there at 4:45 would call time, and you would discuss where you're going from there. Keeping in mind that Thursday, I'm going to allow you to work the whole time in class. Okay, once you're in your group, and by the way, the groups are still set up. I have 2. If I get 4 or 5 other people who want to join, then I'll do a 3rd group. Decide who your 3 people are once you're in your group. Decide how you're going to share and exchange each other's essays. And everyone must read all group members' essays and offer feedback. Now, you can imagine if people show up on Tuesday night and they don't have their homework, then they're a day behind. So this is going to have to be something that you prioritize, because you're going to get a major grade off of this. And I'm trying to help you as much as I can to get an A. So I need for you to take this seriously and get it done. Okay? I don't want to micromanage you guys. Okay? I'm going to let you have autonomy within your group, but for those of you who are thinking, well, I don't know what we're supposed to do. Well, let me give you some suggestions. Plan for a 70-minute session. Budget time accordingly. Now, tomorrow or Tuesday night, you won't have as much as 70 minutes. Keep in mind how many people are in your group today, the 4 paragraphs each person will have, how long revising, editing, and providing feedback for all group members will take, including verifying works cited and in-text citations in proper MLA format. And I've noticed that some of y'all have turned this in, and that needs some work, your works cited and your in-text citations. Then consider what you're going to do if you run out of time in class. Obviously, you're going to run out of time tomorrow, so you can turn it in by Sunday night. So do y'all want to meet on Wednesday sometime, or perhaps in your group you have 5 people, and you say you have Becky and John, and they're going to work together first. So first you're going to pair up, And then maybe Becky wants Andy's paper after that. So y'all can decide. Yeah, Andy will have his. All four of them are going to give their papers to you on the file exchange. Okay. Be sure to label them. So what you would say is, you don't have to put the group number, but you need to put your name, okay, on it, so that y'all don't keep passing the same one. Put your first and last name and just name it by your first and last name on your Microsoft Word. Okay. Now, I will be able to see those, but there's another link for your homework. So let's not worry about that right now. All I want is y'all to collaborate as a group and be on file exchange as a group and work with each other that way. And then we'll go from there Thursday night. I'll be more specific. I'm actually going to go over some other things with you as well. But I'm also going to make another video for how to make comments to your classmates' paper. So stay tuned.